Good afternoon. It's time for our Royal Ambassador lesson for October. My name is John Otten. I am the Royal Ambassador Consultant for Kentucky WMU and Kentucky Baptist. Our RA lesson this month is going to include the Bible story. It's going to include a Campcraft lesson, and it's also going to include the mission story. The mission story and the Bible lesson materials can be found in RA Leader and RA World, and these two magazines can be purchased from WMU at wmustore.com. And those lesson plans in there contain the material I'm going to look at in much more detail. I'm kind of hitting it briefly, and I'm using it kind of as an introduction overview of those two lessons. And obviously, as you meet with your boys, you'll want to give them a more expanded version of those lessons. But that's what we're going to do today. And we're going to start with our Bible story. For October, it covers the story of the Israelites leaving Egypt and crossing the Red Sea. You can read the account in Exodus chapter 13, verse 17 through chapter 14, verse 31. In this passage, we see the Israelites beginning their journey and being led by God. He led them by a pillar of cloud during the day and a pillar of fire during the night. And after the Israelites left Egypt, Pharaoh changed his mind about letting them go and went after them with his army. Now, many of you know how this story ends. God moved the pillar of cloud to stand between the Israelites and Pharaoh's army. He then told Moses to raise his staff up over the Red Sea, provided a strong east wind to divide the waters, and then sent the people across the dry path through the sea. And then finally, God brought the waters crashing down on the army when they tried to follow. Through all of this story, as God led his people, he guided them along the path using three different means. He used, obviously, the pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire to show them the way. He also gave the people direction through Moses. He spoke directly to Moses and said, it's now time to do this. Tell the people to move here. Moses, hold your hand and staff up over the water, that kind of direction. And then finally, God provided direction by opening the way through the water. It was very clear. It was very easy for the people to see and to follow. And what was left for the people was they simply needed to trust God and follow the signs and the direction that he provided. As we go through life, God provides us direction as well. That's one of the things that this story and other passages in the Bible teach us. God is guiding us as we walk through life. The primary means he uses is his word. He speaks to us directly through his word, and he teaches us how he wants us to live, what he wants us to believe, how he wants us to act towards other people, and how to treat people with love and with grace and things like that. So God guides us through his word. He also guides us through his Holy Spirit. When we put our faith in Jesus Christ and God's Spirit indwells us and makes us into a new creation, he resides with us and he speaks to us and helps us to understand God's word, and also helps us to understand how that applies to our life. So God provides direction through his Spirit and also through his word. And another method God uses oftentimes will be direction that comes through another believer, somebody who we talk to, we ask questions of, and they'll say, listen, this is what I've learned. This is what God taught me in my life. This is what I see the Bible saying, and I believe that God is helping you or guiding you in this way. So we receive direction from God as well in a number of different ways. And as I think about that, how God guided the Israelites there in crossing the Red Sea, how God guides us today through his word and Spirit and through other people, it's important for us too to trust God and to follow those signs. Now, transitioning into a Campcraft lesson that can go along with this Bible story. Just like we need to know and follow the signs and the directions that God gives us in life, we also need to be aware of how to find direction and guidance when we're out hiking. For the Woodsman Patch, which is part of Royal Ambassador Campcraft, an RA needs to know how to use the stars or the sun to find direction. And for the hiker patch, an RA needs to know how to follow simple trail signs. Finding directions using the sun or stars can be found on pages 156 and 157 in the Campcraft manual. And I've shown that to you before. Looks like that. And the following simple trail signs, information about that can be found on page 148 in that manual. And the Campcraft manual, if you remember, can be downloaded for free at kywmu.org/campcraft. So we're going to start off and we're going to talk about finding direction using the sun. As we all know, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. So if we're facing the rising sun, let's say I'm facing the rising sun, it's out there in front of me, then I know that east is directly in front of me. And if east is directly in front of me, then north is to my left, south is to my right, and the west is back behind me. That's in the morning when the sun is rising and I'm facing the rising sun, east, north, south, west. Now in the afternoon as the sun is setting, if I'm facing the setting sun, so the setting sun is now in front of me, then I know that that's west, and then to my right would be north, to my left would be south, and behind me would be east. Okay, so rising sun, facing the rising sun, east, north, south, west, or facing the setting sun, then we have west, right? West, north, south, east. Now, during the winter months, the sun is not as high in the sky, and so it can cause that direction to be a little bit off, not a whole lot, just a little bit, but that's something to keep in mind, that the height of the sun in the sky can affect that just a little bit, but nothing drastic. It's not like you're going to make a 90-degree change in those directions, okay? But generally speaking, this is how you can find the direction during the day using the rising and the setting sun. Now at night, you can find your directions, north, south, east, and west, by using the stars. There's a constellation called the Big Dipper. It's real easy to find, and it can point us to the North Star. And the North Star, of course, is in the north and tells us which direction north is. The Big Dipper has 3 stars that form the handle, and then it has 4 stars that form the pan or the cup. And on the opposite side from the handle, on the farthest edge of the pan or the cup, those 2 stars always point to the North Star. So I'm going to share a picture with you on my screen here. So there we go. There's a picture. The little black dots are stars in the sky. Can you see the Big Dipper? It's upside down. There it is right there. So if you can see my cursor, here's the handle, 3 stars right here forming the handle. And then these 4 stars form the pan or the cup connected to that handle. All right. And so I mentioned the 2 stars on the farthest edge of the pan or the cup. That's these 2 right here. If you draw a line through them, coming out the top of the pan. Now remember, my pan is upside down right now. So with it being upside down, my arrow is going to point down. But if you draw an arrow right through there, it's going to point you right down here to the North Star. Now the North Star is not the brightest star in the sky. It's not as bright as several of these up here in the Big Dipper or some of these others around it. But it's the star that is always in the same place in the sky. And that's why we call it the North Star. The rest of the sky, because of the rotation of the Earth, the rest of the sky rotates around this star. Sometimes it's called the pole star. It's almost like it's stuck on a pole coming out from the north of our planet, and the rest of the sky rotates around. And of course, we know that rotation happens because our planet is rotating, the Earth is rotating, but it stays fixed as far as we're concerned in the sky. And so if you can find the Big Dipper and then draw a line through it, it's going to point you to the North Star right out here. Now, the thing to understand, because of the rotation of the planet, which causes our sky to look like it rotates around the North Star, the Big Dipper is going to be in different places during the night, depending on the season. Before we look at that, though, I'm going to give you another look. The Big Dipper is in a different place in this picture. Can you see where it is? That's right, it's right there. You see there's the handle, and here's our pan or our cup, right? So here's, like I said, here's the top of the pan. So we're going to draw an arrow coming out this farthest edge, these two stars on the farthest edge in this direction. Can you see where the North Star is? There it is right there. Okay, now you notice, like I said, in this picture, the Big Dipper is not in the same position. In our previous one, it was up here above the North Star. Now it's over here on the side. So let me show you a picture here. You're obviously not going to see 4 Big Dippers in the sky, but depending on what time of year it is, it's going to be in a different place. So in February and throughout the spring, it's over on this side, working its way up into April. In April, it's here above, and it keeps working its way around in July, and through the summer months, it's over here mostly on this side. And then once we get into the winter months, like November, it's down here below. And something that is makes it difficult during winter is oftentimes part of it will be down below the horizon or will be low enough in the sky that it's difficult to see. So what do you do in the wintertime if the Big Dipper's down here and you're having trouble finding it? Well, there is another constellation that you can use to find the North Star. That constellation is called Cassiopeia. Cassiopeia is not directly opposite the Big Dipper, but kind of on the other side, and it looks like a big W. In this case, it's upside down. See it right there? It looks like mountains there when it's on top, but when it's around down here on the side, it looks kind of like a W. And it's fairly easy to find as well in the sky. These stars are fairly bright and help it to stand out. And the way you use Cassiopeia to find the North Star, and there's a number of different ways that people use, but this is how I do it. I look at this W and I find the flatter section of the W, which is right here. And I draw a line between these two stars here. And then I pretend like that's a bow, and I put an arrow through the center of the string here and draw a line this way. And if you do that, it's going to point over here to where the North Star is. Just like these two point up here to the North Star. For me, when I look at Cassiopeia, I draw this line here on the flatter part of the W, put an arrow through that, and it'll point down here to the North Star. So that's another method you can use during the winter months when it may be more difficult to find the Big Dipper. Now, before we go on to trail signs, I do want to make note of one thing. Whether it's daytime or nighttime, the one thing that can make it even more difficult to use the sun or the stars to find your directions is cloudiness. If you have a cloudy, rainy day, you may have a hard time finding the sun. And at night, if it's cloudy, you're going to have a real hard time seeing the stars and being able to find either the Big Dipper or Cassiopeia. So that's one of the reasons why, even though we teach how to use these methods for finding directions, we always encourage RAs or anybody for that matter who's going on a hike. We encourage you to take a map. If there's a trail map that you can pick up at a ranger station or a visitor center or a place like that, take that map with you. It's important to have that with you, and always take with you a compass as well, because it doesn't matter if it's raining or shining, if the sun's up, or if it's the middle of night and you can't see the stars. That compass will always tell you which direction north is. And we've talked about compasses before. We've had a lesson on using a compass, and so I'm not going to repeat that, but these are things that Royal Ambassadors need to know. Not only how to use the compass, but how to use the stars to find north, how to use the sun to find north, and the other directions off of that. So those are important things, like I said, that RAs need to do. The other part of the Campcraft lesson is learning about trail signs. And so when you go hiking on a trail, nowadays it's almost always marked by some type of trail blaze. Different trails use different blazes. And so it's important at the beginning of the trail, or the trailhead as it's called, there will usually be some kind of trail kiosk or a larger trail sign that will show you a simple version or a simple map of the trail, and then also show you what the trail blaze looks like. And this may include a particular color for that trail, and it may also include a particular shape. One that's really interesting here in Kentucky, the Sheltowee Trace Trail. The trail blaze for that is shaped like a turtle, because the name Sheltowee stands for big turtle, and that was the nickname given to Daniel Boone. So that's a very unique trail shape. Most of the time they're just triangles or rectangles, and I'll show you an example of that right here. There you see a trail blaze right there on that tree. It's a simple white rectangle. It's probably about 2 inches wide and about 6 inches long, and painted on that tree. And that's a very, in fact, that marker right there is how they mark the entire Appalachian Trail, one of the great long distance trails in America. Just a simple white blaze that you can follow all along that trail. Now, as you go along the trail, sometimes you'll find trees with multiple blazes on their white blazes. So that would look something like this. And each of those arrangements of blazes is telling you something different while you're on that trail. So like if there's just a single one, like this upper left-hand corner, that simply means to continue straight ahead. If you see one like this middle top, where the top blaze is offset to the right from the one on the bottom, that means the trail is going to turn to the right. And then at the same time, if the top blaze is offset to the left, like this one here in the top right of the picture, that means the trail is getting ready to turn to the left. Pretty easy to understand. You're walking along the trail, you come to this, it says, oh, I'm moving to the right. Or you come to this, I'm going to the left. If you see 3 of them stacked like this in the bottom right-hand corner, that's an indication of where the trail starts. So you've got 2 here side by side. That's kind of like an end point, and then it's going in this direction, so it's starting. When you come to the end of the trail, this is what you might see. You might see 2 side by side with one down below it. That means the trail has come to an end. And then this last one on the bottom right-hand corner, you've got 2 stacked on top of each other and one right on the middle, and it could be on either side. In this case, it's on the right, but this means that there's a side trail that's intersecting with the trail that you're on. And so you need to understand when you come here, if you're following a particular trail, you don't want to go off on this side trail. You want to keep going straight. The other thing you're going to see a lot of are some different kinds of posts. This is getting more common. Is there will be posts with actually the name of the trail on it. It will have arrows telling you direction, and it may even have distances to like the next trail or to the next point of interest along that trail. So a lot of times you'll see trail markers that look like this. You'll also see some that look like this. They may be plastic or they may be metal, and they'll have a picture on it, and they'll just be nailed to the tree. And in this case, you've got here a trail marker for the Bruce Trail. And so that's something that a lot of people like to hike. It's another long distance trail in America. You'll notice it's combined with a painted blaze, and it's possible that you've got two trails that overlap and go in the same direction, or maybe they're just saying this is the Bruce Trail and you just need to keep going straight ahead. But oftentimes you'll see blazes like this. Sometimes they'll have words on it. Sometimes it'll just be a square that's hung on the tree of a particular color. When you get up above the tree line where there's no trees to paint blazes or to hang markers, sometimes you'll see a stack of rocks like this. It'll be a fairly noticeable stack of rocks, and that will tell you you're walking in the right direction. And as you look out ahead of you down the trail, you'll usually be able to see another one off down the way. And that's the thing about blazes. When a trail is blazed properly, just after you pass one blaze, normally you can see just off in the distance the next blaze coming up, and so it makes it fairly easy to follow. But this is a stack of rocks that will be used to mark a trail above tree line. And then occasionally you'll see something like this, which is a smaller stack of rocks. And usually what happens with this kind of mark is that somebody who's hiking on the trail has noticed something and they want to leave a message for hikers coming behind. And it may be the trail seems confusing, and so they'll put just a simple stack of rocks saying continue this way. So it's very similar to the painted blaze. If it's just a single blaze or a single small stack of rocks, it means keep going straight. Other times they'll put, and I don't have a picture of that, but they'll put a smaller stack of rocks to either the left or to the right. That means you need to make a left-hand turn or a right-hand turn, depending on which side that stack of rocks is on. Sometimes they'll put a smaller stack in front, which means stop, that there's something dangerous up ahead and you don't want to go that way anymore. Some of the reasons for groups using or a hiker using these smaller stack of rocks, it may be that a trail sign has been destroyed or damaged, or in such a way that you can't really determine the right direction. I mean, trees fall over sometimes, and if the blaze was on that tree and it fell over, you may not have a blaze there until the organization that maintains that trail can rectify that. Sometimes there's posts, but the signs have been torn off, things like that. So hikers will try to help each other by leaving these smaller markers along the way. Sometimes they'll tie a ribbon on a tree or things like that, leave a note underneath a rock. You might do that if you're hiking with a group and you get ahead and you find a spot that's a little confusing and you go down the trail a little bit one way and then maybe a little bit down another trail to figure out which is the right one. You might come back to that fork in the trail and leave a little stack of rocks to indicate for your group which way they need to go to follow you. So these are some simple trail signs. They all kind of follow the same method of how they're used to point you forward, to point you to the right, to the left, to stop, or things like that. And so I want to encourage RAs, you need to learn how to use these, and next time you go hiking, pay attention to those trail signs and learn them, and it'll help you feel a lot more confident when you're out hiking on the trail. So these trail signs, knowing them is important. They help guide you on your way and make the hike successful and enjoyable. Thinking about these trail signs that provide direction, In our Bible story where God provided direction for the Israelites, it also connects in with our missionaries for October. Our missionaries for October are Jim and Stacy Landry. They serve as crisis workers in areas of Asia where there are many natural disasters. And during these times of crisis in Asia, God uses Jim and Stacy and other trained crisis workers to bring hope to the people and to help guide them through their suffering by providing relief supplies like food, tents, blankets, water, things like that, and also to help them with community development resources. Sometimes there's people who, where they live, there's very difficult conditions, and maybe they've had a series of natural disasters or crises, and it's made it very difficult for families to work, have jobs, to provide. And so community development resources help families who are struggling to provide food and money to buy, maybe even start a little business. So Jim and Stacy, with the help of Global Hunger Relief or Sin Relief, will also often give chickens or goats or sewing machines or rabbits or vegetable seeds or things like that to help families who are struggling to provide, and also to provide for their families in ongoing ways by like starting a small business. If you have chickens, you can sell the eggs. If you have goats, you can sell baby goats and you can sell milk. If you have a sewing machine, you can make crafts or clothes for the people in your community, things like that. So Jim and Stacy provide these resources and guidance during these difficult times. And then they also share the truth about God with the people they're working with. And as they share that truth and provide that spiritual guidance, many of these people hear about Jesus for the first time and discover that God loves them and that God is willing to help and guide them if they will only stand firm and trust him and follow his lead. Just like the Israelites needed to trust God and follow his lead, just like we need to trust God and follow the direction that he gives us in our lives, so too do the people that Jim and Stacy work with as they learn about Christ and put their faith in him. They need to trust God to give them direction in their lives. And finally, this reminds me of our memory verse for the month. It's taken from our story. It's Exodus 14, verses 13 through 14. And it says this: Moses answered the people. He said, "Don't be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see how the Lord will save you today. Do you see those Egyptians? You will never see them again. The Lord will fight for you. Just be still." So sometimes following God's direction means being still and waiting on God and waiting for him to show you the way so that you can follow him faithfully. So that's our RA lesson for the month, covering what the Bible story is about and mission story is about, and a Campcraft lesson that you can use that provides an application and a connection to both of those lessons. So I hope you enjoyed that and can use that with your RA groups this month. And thank you for joining me. And in a couple of weeks, I will be sharing another RA leader training video. So we'll see you then. Bye.